Do you want to know the quickest way to kill your fruit tree? Josh here. I've killed a lot of trees in my time, and the number one reason that trees die is poorly drained soil. So, what is soil drainage? We're going to talk about that in this lesson. We're going to talk about different ways to overcome poorly drained soils and a simple test that you can do to test your soil drainage before you plant your fruit tree. Are you ready? All right, let's dive into it. So, first, we have to understand what good drainage looks like. When you dig a hole and you fill it with water, how quickly that water dissipates into the soil is called drainage. And there's fast drainage, there's good drainage, and then there's poor drainage, which means that the water just stays in that hole for a long period of time. And the reason that's important is because trees need air in the soil for those roots to breathe. And when it's covered in water that sits there too long, they can't breathe, and that's going to cause the tree to die. All right, so how do you test the soil drainage? So what you're going to do is you're going to dig a hole, and the hole's going to be 12 inches wide by 12 inches deep. And you want to fill that hole completely with water and let it drain all the way out. Then you go and you fill that hole back up again. And this time you're going to start your watch and you're going to time how long it takes for that 12-inch deep hole to empty all the water out of it. And if that only takes an hour, that means you've got fast draining soil. So you've probably got sand. You might need to actually amend the soil with some organic matter to help hold that moisture in the soil longer because it does drain so fast, so quickly. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to be careful because you can wash out nutrients and fertilizer much quicker in a fast draining soil. So that's under an hour. Now, if it takes between 2 and 3 hours, that's considered well drained. That's actually a good rate of dissipation for that water to drain out of that hole. That's 2 to 3 hour mark. So you're good. Now, if it takes 4 to 6 hours or even more, you're going to run into problems. I'm going to be honest. I actually had an almond tree that I planted in a site that just stayed soggy all the time. And the tree looked at first like it was doing really well, had green leaves, new growth. But then all of a sudden it started looking really sickly after it's been raining for a while. And what I realized was that spot just never drained. It just stayed soggy all the time. So that tree ended up dying. And I had to start over in a new spot with a new tree. So it was a really good lesson that I learned early on that I want everybody to take advantage of. All right. So you've measured your soil, you've figured out how quickly it drains, and let's look at some ways to overcome some poorly drained soil. So there's really 3 different methods that I'm going to talk to you about in terms of overcoming poorly drained soil for your fruit tree. Method number 1. Don't plant there. I know that sounds really simple, but seriously, you might want to avoid that site altogether. All right. Number 2, if you need to plant in that spot, you can either build a berm or a raised bed to raise that planting area for the root zone above the soil that's so poorly drained. And so a lot of times I'll actually plant on a mound, maybe 6 to 8 inches up if I know that it's a type of tree that has really sensitive roots to being overly moist. So planting on a mound or a berm now takes more soil, it takes more effort, but in the end, you can still utilize that planting site, even if it has some poorly drained soil. All right. And then the third method is a little bit less common. You could put in a French drain system. And that's where you dig a route underground, you cover it with gravel, you create a way for that water to drain away from that spot. And you'll actually see French drains around houses that have poor drainage to keep the moisture and water away from the foundation of the house. It's very popular in areas where you've got water pooling up near a house. But you can do that for your fruit trees too. In fact, I actually did that for one of my trees where I knew it really had sensitive roots. And so what I did is I dug a whole row where I just filled it with gravel down to a lower spot and actually watched the water flow through that over time. The tree's done really well because of it. All right, so that's soil drainage. That's everything you need to know to get started. Make sure you pick a spot that's got good drainage. If you can't pick a good spot that has good drainage and you need to plant there, try one of those methods to overcome it. But just keep in mind, it is the number one way that new fruit trees are going to die. So make sure to pick the perfect site for your fruit trees and you won't regret it. All right, I'll see you in the next video.